The organ music swelled, a great soaring wave of sound that seemed to lift the very dust motes dancing in the shafts of stained glass light. Every head in the pews turned towards me, their faces a soft focused blur of smiles and happy tears. They saw the white lace, the cathedral-length veil, the serene, beatific smile I had practiced in the mirror until my face ached. They thought I was the picture of a blushing bride, walking towards my happily ever after. They saw a woman on the precipice of her greatest joy. They were fools. My name is Natalie, and as I walked down that aisle, my father's arm linked through mine. I was not walking towards a new beginning. I was walking towards a conclusion, an ending, a meticulously planned, perfectly executed demolition. The soft smile on my lips was a lie. The serene glow in my eyes was a carefully constructed facade. Inside, a storm was brewing. A cold, calculated Arctic storm of a rage so pure and so profound it had frozen my heart solid. Because I knew their secret. My beloved fiancé, Jason, beaming at me from the altar, looking so handsome in his tuxedo, it made my stomach turn. And my sister, my maid of honor, Chloe, standing beside him, her eyes shining with fake, sentimental tears. I knew what they had done, and I was about to expose them all right here, in this house of God, in front of everyone they had ever known and loved. They thought this was a wedding. They were wrong. This was an execution, and I was the executioner. Just 24 hours before I was scheduled to say I do, my world was still perfect. It was a bright, sun-drenched Saturday, the kind of day that feels like a promise. I was at my childhood home, the house I grew up in, a place filled with the ghosts of happy memories. The air smelled of my mother's lemon polish and the roses she had cut from her garden for the bouquets. The mood was one of joyful, chaotic anticipation. I was with my sister, Chloe, my younger sister, my maid of honor, my best friend. We were in my old bedroom, the walls still painted the pale lavender I had chosen when I was 16. She was holding up her bridesmaid dress, a soft sage green silk, and I was helping her steam out the last of the wrinkles. We were laughing, our laughter echoing in the sunlit room as we argued good-naturedly over the reception playlist. "No, Chloe, we are not playing the Macarena," I'd said, laughing. "I'm putting my foot down." "Oh, come on, Nat," she'd giggled, her eyes sparkling with a mischief I had always adored. "It's a classic. You have to have some cheese." She looked so beautiful, so happy for me. Her love, her support, had been my rock through the whole stressful wedding planning process, or so I believed. The moment that shattered my world began with an innocent request. I was trying to find a specific sentimental song, an obscure indie track that Jason and I had listened to on our first date. I couldn't find it on my own phone's streaming service. "Hey," I said, "can you grab Jason's phone? It's on the dresser. I know he has it downloaded. I want to make sure the DJ has the right version." "Sure," Chloe said, her smile never faltering. She picked up his phone and handed it to me. It was unlocked. I didn't think anything of it. We had that kind of trust. The three of us were so close, a unit. I navigated to his music library, my thumb hovering over the search bar. And then the screen lit up with a notification, a text message from Chloe. My blood went cold. My fingers froze over the screen. It was a strange primal instinct, a sudden inexplicable sense of dread that made the air in the room feel thick and heavy. Why would Chloe be texting Jason when she was standing right here? Her name was there, clear as day, above a message that made no sense. A message that was a key to a door I never knew existed, a door that opened into hell. "Last night was, wow, still thinking about it. Can't wait for you to be my brother. See you at the rehearsal dinner." I stared at the screen, the words blurring, rearranging themselves, refusing to compute. It had to be a mistake, a joke, an old message that had somehow resurfaced. But the timestamp was from that morning, just a few hours ago. My stomach dropped. The room seemed to tilt on its axis. You know that feeling when your stomach plummets and the world goes silent, and all you can hear is the frantic, terrified thumping of your own heart. That's what happened when I saw that text. Have you ever felt that kind of betrayal? That sudden, sickening lurch from perfect happiness to absolute horror? My hands were shaking, but a strange cold calm was beginning to descend upon me. I knew with a certainty that was as absolute as my love for Jason had been moments before, that I had to see the rest. My thumb, moving with a will of its own, tapped on the notification, opening their message thread. And there it was, my entire life, my entire future, revealed as a lie, in a scrolling list of blue and gray bubbles. Every text was a knife, every timestamp, a twist. There were weeks of them. Flirtatious comments that started as innocent jokes, secretive plans to meet for coffee. Then the tone shifted. The messages became more heated, more explicit. My fiancé and my sister, my Jason and my Chloe, describing things they had done, things they wanted to do, things they had done while I was at work, while I was addressing wedding invitations, while I was blissfully, stupidly planning the rest of my life with a man who was sleeping with the one other person on earth I thought I could trust without question. And then I saw it. The final, irrefutable proof. The thing that shattered the last vestiges of my hope that this was all some horrible misunderstanding. Chloe had sent him a photo the night before. A discreet photo, but its meaning was unmistakable. It was a picture of a hotel keycard, the kind with the magnetic stripe, resting on a nightstand. The hotel's logo was clearly visible, the Grand Westin, the upscale hotel downtown where most of our out-of-town wedding guests were staying. And in the background, out of focus but still horribly clear, was the corner of a rumpled, unmade bed. The timestamp was 2:13 a.m. last night. While I was at home, sleeping in our bed, dreaming of our future, they were together. My world didn't just crack. It shattered into a million irreparable pieces. The sound of my own breathing was a harsh, ragged sound in the silent room. I felt a wave of physical nausea so intense I had to grip the edge of the dresser to keep from collapsing. Chloe was still humming to herself, steaming the dress, oblivious. The cheerful, innocent sound of her humming was the most grotesque, most monstrous sound I had ever heard. And in that moment of absolute devastation, something strange happened. The grief, the shock, the nausea, it was all there, a churning vortex in my gut. But on top of it, settling over it like a sheet of ice, was a cold, quiet, almost surgical clarity. My mind, which should have been reeling, became preternaturally calm. There would be no screaming match. There would be no public meltdown. There would be no tearful confrontation that would allow them the satisfaction of painting me as the hysterical, wronged woman. No, there would be a reckoning, a public reckoning. They wanted a wedding? They wanted an audience? I would give them one. With hands that were now perfectly steady, I took a screenshot of every single damning message. I screenshotted the photo of the hotel keycard. I forwarded the evidence to my own phone, and then, with a calm, deliberate precision that terrified me, I deleted the entire message thread from Jason's phone. I deleted the photos. I cleared the call log. I erased every trace of their betrayal. I handed the phone back to Chloe, my face a perfect, serene mask. "Found it," I said, my voice sounding strangely normal, as if it belonged to someone else. "Thanks, sis." She smiled at me, a bright, beautiful, treacherous smile. "Anytime, Nat, anything for my big sister on her big day." The next 24 hours were a masterclass in performance art. They were pure, unadulterated agony, a journey through the 9 circles of my own personal hell, all while smiling and nodding and pretending that my world hadn't been burned to the ground. Every congratulations, every hug from a well-meaning relative, every "I'm so happy for you," felt like a physical blow, a fresh reminder of the colossal, humiliating lie my life had become. I watched them, my fiancé and my sister. I watched them with my new, cold, analytical eyes. And now that I knew what to look for, their betrayal was everywhere. It was in the way their eyes would meet for a fraction of a second too long across the room at the rehearsal dinner. It was in the casual, familiar way his hand brushed her arm as he passed her at the bar. It was in the shared, secret smiles they exchanged when they thought no one was looking. Each glance, each touch, was a dagger twisting deeper into the wound in my soul. They weren't just betraying me, they were reveling in it. They were flaunting it, hiding in plain sight, so confident in my love, my trust, my utter stupid blindness. That night, I went home not to our shared apartment, but to my parents' house, as tradition dictated. While my mother fussed over my dress and my father paced nervously, I locked myself in the bathroom. I took out my own phone, my hands steady, and I printed every single screenshot. The texts, the photo of the hotel keycard. I folded the pieces of paper, each one a testament to their depravity, and I tucked them into the small, embroidered clutch bag that was meant to hold my lipstick and a tissue for my happy tears. This wasn't just a clutch anymore. It was my weapon. It was an arsenal of truth. The morning of my wedding day dawned bright and clear, a cruel mockery of the storm raging inside me. As my bridesmaids, my dearest friends, buzzed around me, their faces shining with excitement, I felt a profound, chilling sense of detachment. I was an actress playing a part, my body going through the motions while my soul watched from a great cold distance. As I sat in the makeup chair, my face being painted into the mask of a blushing bride, Chloe came and stood behind me. She placed her hands on my shoulders, her reflection smiling at me in the mirror. Her smile was nervous, overly effusive, a guilty smile. "You look breathtaking, Nat," she whispered, her voice thick with a fake emotion that made me want to vomit. "Just absolutely perfect." I met her eyes in the mirror, and for a second, I let the mask slip. I let her see the ice in my gaze. I saw a flicker of fear, of confusion in her own eyes before she quickly looked away. But the seed of her unease had been planted. Later, as I stood in the back of the church, hidden from view, I put on my custom-made lace gown. It was a beautiful dress, a dress I had dreamed of my entire life. As my mother fastened the long row of pearl buttons, the weight of the dress felt insignificant compared to the weight of the secret I was carrying, the weight of the evidence nestled in my clutch. The organ began to play. It was time. My father took my arm, his eyes misty. "Ready, sweetheart?" he whispered. I looked down the long aisle. I saw the faces of my friends, my family. And at the end, standing at the altar, bathed in the soft, ethereal light of the stained glass, I saw Jason. He was beaming at me, his face a picture of love and adoration. But I saw the lie in his eyes. I saw the relief that he had gotten away with it. He looked so handsome, so perfect, so utterly, damnably oblivious. My heart was a storm of grief and rage, but my face was a mask of perfect, serene calm. "I'm ready," I said to my father, and I began to walk towards my revenge. The walk down that aisle felt like a mile. Each step was a lifetime. The organ music, meant to be a triumphant score for my joy, was a funeral dirge in my ears. With every step, I felt the weight of the 100 pairs of eyes on me, their faces a sea of blissful ignorance. They saw a fairy tale. I was living in a horror story. My father's hand on my arm was a warm, steady pressure, the only real thing in a world that had become a grotesque pantomime. He leaned in, his voice thick with emotion. "You look like an angel, sweetheart," he whispered. I smiled at him, a brittle, fragile thing, and hoped he couldn't see the abyss in my eyes. Finally, I reached the altar. I reached him, Jason, my beloved, my betrayer. He turned to me and his face was a masterpiece of deception. He was beaming, his eyes shining with what looked like pure, unadulterated love. He looked relieved, as if he had been holding his breath and could finally exhale. He thought he had made it. He thought he had gotten away with it. The sheer, breathtaking arrogance of it almost made me laugh. He took my hand from my father's. His skin was warm, his grip firm and proprietary. "You look perfect," he breathed, his voice a low, intimate murmur meant only for me. "I am the luckiest man in the world." I looked into his eyes, the eyes I had once thought held my entire universe, and I felt nothing. No love, no spark, just a cold, dead emptiness. The man I loved was gone, or perhaps he had never existed at all. In his place was this stranger, this liar, this creature of casual cruelty. I smiled my serene practiced smile. "You have no idea, Ato," I said softly, my voice sweet as poison. He didn't catch the double meaning. Of course he didn't. He was too lost in his own triumphant narrative. We turned to face the officiant, and there, standing beside Jason, was Chloe, my sister, my maid of honor. She was radiant in her sage green dress, her face a perfect mask of sentimental joy. She met my eyes and gave me a small, tearful smile, as if she were overcome with happiness for me. I could smell her perfume, the light floral scent she had worn since she was a teenager. It was a scent I had always associated with sisterhood, with secrets shared in our lavender bedroom, with laughter and love. Now it smelled like rot. It smelled like betrayal. The ceremony began. The officiant, a kind-faced man with a gentle voice, began to speak. His words, which I had once helped to choose, were now a grotesque parody, a bitter mockery of everything that was happening. He spoke of love, of its sanctity, of its power to heal and to bind. I stood there, Jason's hand in mine, and I thought of their texts, of the hotel keycard, of the rumpled bed. He spoke of trust, of honesty, of the sacred vow to forsake all others. I looked at the back of Chloe's head, at the intricate braid in her hair that I had helped her with that morning, and I felt a wave of cold, hard rage wash over me. Forsake all others. Unless it's your fiancé's sister, unless it's the night before your wedding. He spoke of family, of the joining of two families, of the unbreakable bond of blood and marriage. I glanced at my parents in the front pew, their faces shining with a pride and happiness that was a knife in my heart. Then I looked at his parents, beaming at their perfect son, the man who had achieved everything they had ever wanted for him. They had no idea. They were all celebrating a lie, a union that was already a rotting corpse. I was hyper-aware of everything, the heavy scent of the lilies on the altar, the way the light from the stained glass window cast a halo of colored light around Jason's treacherous head, the feel of his thumb stroking the back of my hand, a gesture that had once made my heart leap, and now made my skin crawl, the rustle of Chloe's silk dress as she shifted her weight beside me. I felt like I was floating above my own body, watching a particularly cruel and well-acted play. The bride, the groom, the maid of honor, we were all playing our parts to perfection, but only I knew the real script. Only I knew that the final act was going to be a tragedy, for them. And now, the officiant said, his voice warm and inviting, Jason and Natalie have prepared their own vows. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was it. The moment was approaching. Jason turned to me, his face alight with that same fake, adoring love. He cleared his throat and began to speak, his voice ringing with a sincerity that was Oscar-worthy. Natalie, he began, his eyes locked on mine. From the moment I met you, I knew my life was changed forever. You are my best friend, my confidant, my soulmate. You are the most honest, loving, and decent person I have ever known. The hypocrisy was so profound, so breathtaking, it was almost sublime. He was praising me for the very qualities he had so casually, so brutally trampled upon. I just stared at him, my serene smile unwavering, letting him weave the rope that I would use to hang him. I promise to love you, to honor you, to be faithful to you, in good times and in bad. For the rest of my life, he said, his voice thick with emotion. You are my world, Natalie, and I can't wait to start our life together. He finished, his eyes shining. A collective sentimental sigh rippled through the church. He had played his part perfectly. Now it was my turn. I took a deep breath. I did not look at the vows I had written, the vows that were tucked away in my clutch, vows filled with love and hope and promises that now tasted like ash in my mouth. Instead, I looked at him, and then I let my gaze drift to Chloe, who was watching me with a tearful, triumphant smile. Jason, I began, my voice clear and steady. I thought I knew what love was. I thought it was trust. I thought it was honesty. I thought it was coming home to your best friend every night. I paused, letting the words hang in the air. I learned just yesterday that I was wrong. I saw a flicker of confusion in his eyes. Chloe's smile faltered for a fraction of a second. The officiant looked at me, a little puzzled. I continued, my voice still calm, still sweet. I learned that love can be a performance. I learned that trust can be a weapon used against you. And I learned that the person you think you know better than anyone in the world can be a complete and utter stranger. The atmosphere in the church began to shift. The warm, sentimental glow was beginning to cool, replaced by a current of confusion, of unease. The smiles on the faces in the pews were beginning to look a little strained. The officiant cleared his throat, a nervous sound. "And now," he said, trying to get the ceremony back on track, "we come to the part of the ceremony where we ask if there is anyone present who can show just cause why these two people should not be legally joined in marriage." He looked out, behind the silent congregation. "If anyone here knows any reason why these two should not be joined in holy matrimony, speak now or forever hold your peace." The traditional rhetorical question hung in the air. This was the moment, the precipice. Jason, sensing that something was terribly wrong, opened his mouth to speak. Perhaps to laugh it off, to say his vows, to rush to the end before the train went completely off the rails. But I was faster. I raised my hand slightly, a small, simple gesture that commanded the attention of the entire room. I looked from the officiant, to Jason, to Chloe, and in the dead, ringing silence of that holy place, I spoke the two words that would detonate their world. I do. The two words, I do, dropped into the holy silence of the church like stones into a perfectly still, sacred pool. The ripples of confusion spread instantly. A collective, confused murmur rippled through the pews. The officiant, a kind man who had been officiating weddings for 40 years, looked utterly baffled. His mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. He had asked a rhetorical question, a piece of ancient liturgy, and I had answered it. Jason stared at me, his handsome face a mask of utter confusion. A nervous, uncertain laugh escaped his lips. "Nat, honey," he whispered, his grip on my hand tightening, "I think you're a little ahead of schedule. That's my line." Chloe, beside him, let out a high-pitched, nervous giggle. "She's just excited," she said, her voice a little too loud, a little too shrill. But I wasn't looking at them. I was looking at the officiant. "You asked if anyone knew a reason why we should not be joined in matrimony," I said, my voice clear and ringing, carrying to the very back of the church. And I answered, "I do. I have a reason." The confusion in the church curdled into a thick, palpable shock. The murmuring stopped. The air became heavy, charged. I felt my father take a half-step towards me from the front pew, his face etched with worry. I saw my mother's hand fly to her mouth. Jason's face had gone from confused to alarmed. "Natalie, what are you doing?" he hissed, his voice a low, angry buzz. "Stop this. You're making a scene." "A scene?" I said, finally turning to look at him, my serene smile never wavering. "Oh, Jason, we're just getting to the scene." I gently pulled my hand from his grasp. I turned to face the congregation, to face our families, our friends, the 100 people who had gathered to witness our love story. And then I turned back to him. "I think the reason I object," I said, my voice now carrying a cold, sharp edge, "is the same reason you were so relieved when I finally made it to the altar. The same reason my sister hasn't been able to look me in the eye all morning." I reached into the small embroidered clutch bag that hung from my wrist. The weapon, the arsenal. My fingers, steady as a surgeon's, retrieved the folded pieces of paper. I unfolded the first one, a screenshot of a text message. "Jason," I said, my voice conversational, as if I were asking him about the weather, "do you remember sending a text message to Chloe yesterday morning, at 8:14 a.m. to be precise?" I looked down at the paper, though I had the words memorized, burned into my brain. It said, and I quote, "Last night was, wow, still thinking about it. Can't wait for you to be my brother. See you at the rehearsal dinner." A collective gasp went through the church. It was a physical sound, a sudden intake of 100 breaths. Jason's face, which had been flushed with anger, went completely deathly pale. He looked as if he had been turned to stone. I didn't wait for his answer. I turned my gaze to my sister, my beloved Chloe. She was staring at me, her face a mask of pure, unadulterated horror. The color had drained from her cheeks, leaving her looking sallow and sick beneath her carefully applied makeup. "And Chloe," I said, my voice dripping with a sweet, venomous poison, "my dear sister, my maid of honor, do you remember the photo you sent to Jason the night before last, at 2:13 a.m.? I held up the second piece of paper, the screenshot of the hotel keycard, the rumpled bed in the background. I made sure the people in the front pews could see it. The one from the Grand Westin Hotel? Room 712, I believe? It's a lovely hotel. I hear the beds are very comfortable." Chloe made a sound, a small, strangled sob, a wounded animal sound. Her bouquet of white roses slipped from her trembling fingers and fell to the floor with a soft, funereal thud. Her legs seemed to give way, and she swayed, grabbing onto Jason's arm for support. But Jason was frozen, paralyzed by his own guilt, unable to even react. I turned back to the congregation, to the sea of shocked and horrified faces. I saw my mother, her face ashen, tears streaming down her cheeks. I saw my father, his expression one of stony, murderous rage, his eyes fixed on Jason. I saw Jason's parents, their faces a mixture of confusion and dawning, gut-wrenching shame. "I found these messages yesterday," I announced to the silent, horrified room, "on my fiancé's phone, while my sister, my maid of honor, was helping me steam her bridesmaid dress." The sheer sordid ugliness of it hung in the air. It seems that while I was at home, dreaming of my wedding, my fiancé and my sister were celebrating a little early, in a hotel room downtown. The silence was broken by a single hysterical sob. It was Chloe. She was openly weeping now, her body shaking with great, gulping sobs of pure, unadulterated guilt and public humiliation. Jason finally found his voice. "Natalie, no," he stammered, his eyes wide with panic. It's not what you think. We can talk about this privately." "Privately?" I laughed, a short, sharp, bitter sound that held no humor. "You had your chance for privacy in room 712. This," I said, gesturing to the church, to our families, to the wreckage of our lives. "This is the consequence. This is the truth." I turned back to the officiant, who looked as if he wished the ground would open up and swallow him whole. "So yes," I said, my voice ringing with a final, terrible clarity. "I have a reason. I cannot marry a man who would betray my trust so completely, so callously. I cannot marry a man who would sleep with my own sister the night before our wedding." I then looked at the weeping, pathetic mess that was my sister. "And I certainly," I said, my voice dropping to a low, cold whisper of pure contempt, "cannot have a sister who would do such a thing, who would smile in my face while stabbing me in the heart." I took the beautiful diamond engagement ring from my finger, the ring Jason had placed there with so many pretty empty promises. I looked at him, at his pale, terrified face. I didn't throw it. That would have been too dramatic, too emotional. Instead, I walked the final few steps to the altar and placed it gently on the velvet cushion where our wedding bands were supposed to go. "The wedding is off," I said, my voice calm and steady. "But please," I added, turning to our stunned guests, "enjoy the reception. It's all paid for." And with that, I turned my back on them. I turned my back on my cheating fiancé, on my treacherous sister, on the ruins of my past. I did not run. I did not cry. I walked. I walked back down that long aisle, my head held high, my spine straight, the sound of Chloe's hysterical sobs, and the frantic, panicked whispering of our guests echoing behind me. I walked out of that church, out of that life, and into the bright, uncertain sunlight of my own reclaimed future. The storm inside me had finally broken, and I had survived. The heavy oak doors of the church boomed shut behind me, the sound a definitive, echoing finality. It was the sound of a chapter, an entire volume of my life, slamming closed forever. The sudden bright sunlight was a shock after the dim, holy light of the church. It was too bright, too cheerful for the demolition I had just initiated. I stood on the top step, my beautiful, expensive lace dress feeling like a costume from a play that had just ended. I could still hear the chaos erupting behind me, the muffled sound of raised voices, of Chloe's hysterical, animalistic sobs, of 100 confused and horrified people all talking at once. It was the sound of a bomb I had planted, a bomb made of truth, finally detonating. I did not look back. I did not want to see the shrapnel. My father was beside me a moment later. He had followed me out, his face a mask of stony, terrible rage. He didn't say anything. He just took off his suit jacket and wrapped it around my shoulders. A gesture of protection that was so deeply paternal, so full of a love I had never doubted, that it almost broke the icy composure I had clung to for 24 hours. "Let's go home, sweetheart," he said, his voice rough. He led me to the waiting limousine, the one that was supposed to whisk me and my new husband away to our reception, to our new life. The irony was so thick it was suffocating. The driver, his face a perfect professional blank, opened the door for us. As we slid into the cool leather interior, I finally let myself break. The serene mask crumbled, and a single dry sob escaped my lips, a ragged, painful sound. My father pulled me into his arms, and I buried my face in his chest as the car pulled away from the curb, leaving the ruins of my life and the architects of that ruin behind me. I didn't go to the reception. I couldn't. But I heard about it later in fragmented, horrified accounts from my friends and family. It was, by all accounts, a scene of utter, glorious chaos. My father told me what happened inside the church after I left. He said that for a moment, there was just stunned silence. Then Jason's father, a man I had always respected, a man of quiet dignity, walked up to his son. He didn't shout. He didn't scream. He just looked at Jason with a look of profound, bottomless disappointment and shame. He said 2 words. "You are no son of mine." Then he and Jason's mother turned and walked out of the church without a backward glance. My own mother, her face ashen, walked over to her weeping, hysterical daughter, Chloe. She didn't comfort her. She didn't embrace her. She looked down at the pathetic, sobbing mess on the floor and said, her voice trembling with a rage I had never heard from her before, "You have broken this family. You have broken my heart. Get out of my sight." The guests, caught between horror and a morbid, irresistible curiosity, actually went to the reception. My father, in a moment of pure, pragmatic rage, had stood up and announced that since everything was paid for, they might as well eat. It became the most surreal, most talked about event of the year. A wedding reception without a bride or groom. A feast at a funeral. People ate the expensive food, drank the vintage champagne, and whispered in hushed, horrified tones about the drama they had just witnessed. Jason and Chloe, I was told, had been the last to leave the church. They were pariahs, lepers in their own social circle. No one would speak to them. No one would even look at them. They were forced to walk through the gauntlet of their own shame, a shame so public, so profound, it was a stain that would never wash away. The aftermath was swift and brutal. Their lives, the perfect, privileged lives they had been so willing to risk for a sordid, cheap thrill, didn't just unravel, they imploded. Jason's world collapsed first. His father, a man of considerable influence in the city's financial sector, was true to his word. He cut him off, not just financially, but professionally. Jason lost his prestigious job at his father's investment firm within a week. The official reason was corporate restructuring, a bitter, ironic echo of so many other corporate betrayals. The real reason, the one that spread through the city like a virus, was that he was a man of no character, a man who had publicly, spectacularly humiliated his family. He was disgraced. Last I heard, he was working some low-level sales job in another state, his charm and good looks rendered useless by the stench of his reputation. Chloe's fate was, in many ways, even swifter and more absolute. My parents, their hearts broken by her treachery, disowned her. It was not a dramatic shouting affair. It was a quiet, cold, and final severing. They packed up her belongings from her room in their house, the lavender room where we had once shared all our secrets, and they put them in storage. They changed the locks, they blocked her number. To them, the daughter they had raised, the daughter who could betray her own sister in such a monstrous way, was gone. She had ceased to exist. She tried, apparently, to cling to Jason, the co-conspirator in her own downfall. But their sordid little affair, born in the darkness of deceit, could not survive the harsh, unforgiving light of public shame. It withered and died, as all things built on such rotten foundations do. She, too, left the city, a pariah, her reputation irrevocably shattered. And me? I grieved. I grieved for the man I thought I was marrying. I grieved for the sister I thought I had. I grieved for the future I had so carefully, so lovingly planned. The initial weeks were a blur of pain. There were days I couldn't get out of bed, the weight of the betrayal of physical presence pinning me to the mattress. But I was not alone. My friends, my true friends, rallied around me. They brought me food. They sat with me in silence when I couldn't speak. They let me rage and cry and curse the world. My parents, their own hearts broken, were my anchors. They wrapped me in a cocoon of unwavering, unconditional love, proving to me what real family, what real loyalty looked like. Slowly, painstakingly, I began to heal. I took the money that had been saved for the wedding, for our honeymoon in Italy, and I used it to invest in myself. I went to therapy. I took a pottery class. I started running, pounding the pavement every morning, running away from the ghost of my past and towards a future I couldn't yet see. And then, one day, I realized I hadn't thought about them all day. The ache in my chest was a little duller. The world seemed a little brighter. I was starting to feel like myself again. Not the old me, the naive, trusting girl who had walked down that aisle. A new me, a stronger me. A woman who had walked through fire and had not been burned, but forged. I decided I needed a new beginning, a real one. I focused on my career in graphic design. I built up my portfolio. And 6 months after the wedding that wasn't, I packed up my life, sold the house that was supposed to be our home, and moved to a new city, a place where no one knew my story, where I could be just Natalie again. That public act of defiance in the church, as excruciating and as terrifying as it was the most liberating thing I have ever done. In that moment, I didn't just expose their lies, I reclaimed myself. I refused to be the silent, weeping victim in their sordid little drama. I took the pen from their hands, and I wrote my own ending, an ending where I walked away not broken, but whole. I know now that I didn't just dodge a bullet. I dodged a lifetime of quiet misery, of living with a man incapable of true loyalty, and a sister capable of the deepest betrayal. I learned that true love and real family aren't built on a foundation of secrets and deceit. They're built on a bedrock of unwavering honesty, of fierce loyalty, and of profound, simple respect. My story is not a tragedy. It's a testament to finding strength when your world falls apart, to the ferocious power of a woman who refuses to be broken. It's proof that sometimes the most painful endings are just the beginning of a much better story. If you have ever had to stand up for yourself when your world fell apart, if you have ever had to pick up the pieces after a betrayal that left you breathless, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Your strength deserves to be acknowledged. Share your story in the comments below. Let's create a space where we can celebrate our resilience, where we can remind each other that we are not defined by the wounds inflicted upon us, but by the courage it takes to heal them. And of course, if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe for more stories of survival, of justice, and of the incredible power of reclaiming your own narrative. Thank you for listening. Thank you for letting me share my story.